Hey everyone, welcome to Keeping Up with CUBiO. I'm your host, Kelechi Irebu, and I have a lovely in-house guest.
Wes Okeke, CEO of CUBiO Innovation Hub here in Houston.
Awesome. And Wes, for those that don't know, go ahead and give us a little bit about your background and the history of CUBiO.
Sure. First of all, my background is in business development, marketing, and sales. I actually graduated as an electrical engineer many years ago. CUBiO started about 8 years ago, and it originally started as a hub for bioscience primarily, and finding bioscience type startups in the US and particularly in Texas, and helping them find a way to launch in Asia, where they have a much larger market. But more recently, when I joined CUBiO about 5 years ago, we transitioned a bit. We still focus on having a global presence. We still focus on working with early stage startups in the biotech and the medtech industry, especially those that are coming in as potentially postdocs. And then after that, they get to the next stage where they need access to equipment. And so we opened up the lab side of CUBiO approximately about 4 years ago, which was really exciting. We're one of the few. I think we're only about two of these types of organizations here in Houston that support the early stage startups. And the interesting thing about early stage in this industry is they typically are much, much different than the tech, right? The equipment they need is not equipment they can actually have in their garage or at home. And it's typically not only big, but it's quite expensive. So setting up a lab where startups can come in, people can come in and use the equipment without having the overhead of cost and space being an issue for them has been very valuable to the ecosystem here in Houston.
Wow. What would you say is CUBiO's edge? What makes CUBiO unique?
I think CUBiO is unique in the sense of the team that runs CUBiO. And it's not because I'm biased, but I am biased. But I think we have the experience and the skill. So my background was in launching new products and business strategy, and then also the investor readiness. My superpower is really the business strategy. So I like to look at companies, find out what they need to do so that they're scalable and competitive, and that they grow in what we call the global mindset. And then Dean, who's our chief scientific officer, is focused on the type of technology that is being developed to see where it has a world value or place to scale to, and then partnerships. And these partnerships are necessary to have for the startups that are coming into Houston. Houston is still in its infancy when it comes to the biotech and medtech industry. So having access to those right partners and resources early on is extremely valuable for our startups. And then we have a few other team members as well that are playing a pivotal role in the growth of CUBiO, which is yourself and Jaslyn.
Wow, okay, nice. And I know that you have something cool called the Nomad. How does the Nomad play a part in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so the Nomad it's called the Nomad Network. And the focus of Nomad is bridging a lot of these strategic partners together and these companies and organizations, from CUBiO to Headway, which I'm sure you've heard about. Headway I started approximately 12 years ago, and we focus on providing the tools and the resources to accelerators to develop startups that are strategic in thinking, but then also investor ready. CUBiO focuses on the life science part of innovation, not just in Texas, but then globally. And the Nomad's goal is to take these types of organizations that have a focus in developing the innovation, developing the startups, and then bringing in the right resources, connecting them with the right vendors, partners, NGOs, and even customers worldwide, so that they can launch locally, but then get a reach globally. And during that whole process or that journey, it's very important that they have the right type of purpose-driven companies and support system and community involved to ensure their success.
Wow. And for these companies, these early stage companies, these postdocs, what type of programs or resources does CUBiO have to offer them?
And that's a good question. I think for the early stage postdocs, one of the things they need is just information, okay? What do I need to do, and how long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? Where is my next significant milestone, right? When you start a business, there's so many unknowns, and that's very challenging. I remember myself starting many years ago, and when I first started, I didn't know, okay, what should I do first? What should I do second? What is going to help me succeed at each step of the way, even though starting a business is trial and error. But having the right mentors and the right community in place that helps provide this guidance to a postdoc is extremely important. And not only that, it saves them countless hours, it saves them tons of money, it saves them a great amount of critical mistakes that could hurt and actually prevent them from moving forward. So that I've seen a lot of startups just start out very early, very energized and ready to go, great idea, but then they are cut short just in the early stage of their development because they didn't know what they didn't know, as we tend to say. So the first part of this is making sure they get the guidance. The second part of this is making sure they get the resources in regards to tools, equipment, and then people, right? People resources is very important for these early stage postdocs. I used to, many years ago when I was in corporate, I used to mentor a lot of postdocs because they had these brilliant ideas, this IP they developed, but they had a very difficult time knowing how to get that commercialized. And so this became very dear to me, and I started our sales meeting was held in Orlando, and I actually called it, the name of the company at that time was JAI, and I called it JAI Lab. And a lot of stuff spun off from that initial thought. But the reason why I did that is because I brought in all the postdocs because they had the new innovation. And then I brought in the sales and I brought in other industry partners because with that type of group, some good collision took place, right? In not only new technology that should be developed or implemented, but then also how does it reach that customer that has a significant problem that this would actually solve.
Wow. And for our early stage founders that may watch this video or this interview, what is like one takeaway that you would want them to leave with this video?
So for the early stage founders, the one thing I want them to understand is we're not asking for them to commit to anything except to do their best. I think whenever a early stage founder or anyone that's looking to start a business, they're always concerned, okay, what is this going to cost me? What am I going to lose? And so we don't want them to worry about that because we're not going to ask them for anything, whether it's equity or it's money in these early stages. So there's no burden for them to worry about. What we do ask for them is to be committed to their goal. And that's the one thing I want them to realize.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you guys for watching. This concludes Keeping Up with CUBiO. Thank you for your time, Wes.
Thank you.